Matt. Okay, so we are going to have what's called a public conversation, meaning that Terry and Dick and I are going to start up here. We're each going to tell a brief story about a moment or a process by which something got unveiled for us. A layer of denial came down. We saw the system or a piece of the system for what it was, and the struggles that that seeing has caused. And then we're gonna have two more chairs, open chairs up here, and so we're gonna invite anybody. So you're gonna have to actually move, get out of here, and come on up and join the conversation. So bring a question, bring a reflection on anything that we've been talking about so far. Bring something you're struggling with this. Bring, this is full of crap. What are you talking about? You know, whatever. Bring whatever you got, right? Bring it into the conversation. So here we go. So, and you know, none of you or many of you have not met Dick Harmon. So stand up, Dick, and let's welcome. I don't know if this has been made clear enough to those of you who are new to this process, but organizing the Biocommons started with Dick about 10, 12 years ago. What? 8? 6? But in this room, right in this very room, right? We're in the 7th iteration, I believe it is, or the 7th stage of evolution of it. But we would not be in this process without the pain and struggle he went through to get to this place. So here we go. Would you be willing to start with your story, Terry?
Sure. So this is about 15 years ago, Portland Organizing Project, 8 congregations, North, Northeast, and Southeast Portland, identified issue, affordable housing. We discovered that there was a plan downtown to do revitalization of downtown with 2 urban renewal districts. And through Dick Harmon, who was our organizer, we went month after month to the Central City Task Force, which was the presidents of all the major banks in downtown Portland, the CEOs of the utilities, the superintendent of schools, the president of Portland State University, on and on and on, who were making plans for downtown Portland, absorbing all of the public money set aside for affordable housing. So we gradually inched our way into conversation and eventually struck a deal that we wouldn't oppose all the public money going to downtown if they would help us create another fund of public money to do affordable housing throughout the city of Portland. And we were able to secure the first 2 years of a $15 million per year for 10-year plan. And then guess what happened? Deregulation. And all the banks in Oregon were bought by national banks, so there was no longer a single person, a president to go to that had the community at heart. All the utilities were sold. You've heard about Enron and Portland General Electric. Okay, that was an example. So, and then all the players that we had negotiated with changed. So the learning for me was we're dealing with a bigger economy and a more distant economy than we thought we were. That's it.
That's it.
You said to be short.
I
Right?
did,
Okay.
right. Well, my story of an aha or a moment when I saw something was a couple times ago in OBC. It was much more intense than what you're all experiencing now. It was like 40 hours of class time and about
no breaks.
30 pages,
No breaks.
30 pages of reading every week. So you're getting off so easy. Just telling you. Anyway, anyway, so the moment was, it was the day on capitalism. We had a whole day on it, and whoever was presenting was talking, kind of laid out industrial capitalism, and then laid out financial capitalism. So there's a shift, right? Primarily industrial capitalism, and then this financial capitalism kind of took over. And industrial what I saw was, so the value of industrial capitalism was destroying the planet. It was turning like Earth's resources into products, right? Which was just in the process of like destroying the planet to do that, right? I'm like, oh wait, okay, I don't want that, right? So then I look at financial capitalism, and it's all about making money on pretend money, right? And have no loyalty to anybody that might be doing any of the work for any of this. No loyalty to a place. No, I mean it's placeless, peopleless, careless system, right? Financial capital, soulless, right? And I saw that and I thought, oh my God, these two forms of capitalism, which are completely dominant in the world that I live in, are 100% completely antithetical to everything I believe in and everything that my faith says. And I thought, how in the world do I live? How do I live in but not of? Because I can't just go along with it.
In late 2004, I was working as the lead regional organizer for the outfit that Terry works for now in Oregon, Washington, Alberta, and British Columbia. And at that point, I began to get alarmed, really alarmed and anxious about what was happening to the families in the institutions that made up these broad-based organizations we were trying to build. People were going nuts in the boom. The manic on the way up, right?
Right.
People in Canada were getting great jobs, especially around the tar sands, bringing people in, destroying families from all over Canada. The native people were getting blown off completely, destroying culture. And here, everybody was, oh, it's going to last forever. It is good. It is unmitigated good. All of the press was in on it. The politicians all blessed it. Half the churches blessed it. And I was sick. I didn't know why. That was a period when I got pneumonia, by the way. It's kind of interesting. But starting in that late period in 2005, I said, I have to get to the bottom of this. I've been organizing a long time by then, but we had never really stopped and looked at what we're trying to look at here. We went along with our assumptions, unexamined. If you build a big organization, you get more of the pie, that's it. It'll grow forever. So I launched into a self-study program. I reached out to economists and ex-regulators and scholars, and I began to build a library and devoured this stuff. I was absolutely obsessed with it. Drove my family nuts. People in Selwood, where I live, all would cross the street. I was completely obsessed with this. And I kept having nightmares about my grandparents. When I was born in 1937, and within 2.5 years of my birth, I had lost both grandfathers and my father to the forces of the Depression. My maternal grandfather killed himself, shotgun right here, farmer. My mother, who was 20 and the youngest, the closest to him, never recovered. She went through men like crazy, and I grew up in that kind of a situation with a lot of psychological and physical violence. So I had this emotion this set of emotions driving this thing, plus the people in front of me, okay, in workshops all over this region, trying to make sense of it. Pastors going crazy because their people were leaving, all kinds of confusion. I began to get a hold of some of it, some of the key elements, and as the metaphor that I use is, it's like going down a coal mine without any light. The deeper, the worse it got. And I finally felt like I was on solid ground by the spring of 2009. And in this room, over that summer, we held suppers. We invited the community, the neighborhood, to come in and tell stories about pressures on their families from the economy. So we had people come in, a fair number of people, every Saturday night. And I wanted to know what was happening. And there was a team of people. So, you know, it was like the table leaders here. And so we got to talk with everybody and what those pressures were like. So you had what you expected. People lost their homes, their jobs, their health care, homeless, cut off from family, no sense of roots, lost. And I just got more and more desperate over that summer. And it was very, very close for me to a nervous breakdown, a spiritual breakdown. I love this community here, but they weren't cut it in terms of helping me understand this thing, really, at the time. So late August, in this room, there's a guy sitting here, and for some reason, the story that he told me kicked off something different. He lost his job, that's all he cared about. So up in me came a memory from 1979 of a big worker-owned cooperative system based in the Basque region of Spain called Mondragon. Some of you have heard it. It's beautiful. Look it up. Mondragon. And out of it, you know, I listened to the guy and I just shouted. I said, Mondragon! That's what we need. And Scott Brazil, who was over where Michael was, he said, Harmon's going nuts finally. Okay. So we got together and I said, Scott, there is a movie on YouTube or somewhere that we can find. It's on Mondragon. I've seen it. I've seen it 100 times during the 80s. It's a great movie. Let's bring it in. We advertised. There were about 20, 25 people here. Most of them young. Most of them really interested in how you build new enterprises. And we had a blast. Now, I had retired in June of 2008. And you know, guys my age facing retirement, it's kind of like your death, right? So I had this obsession with the economy that seemed to be headed toward death, and my own death, if you will, at the same time. So I taught a little bit that night, and these folks liked it. So at the end of the evening, I said to Scott, hey, I can teach, I can be useful. And out of that came this class. Because once I got the Mondragon idea, there was this whole set of other institutions, like credit unions, all the land trust stuff, all that, all the good stuff that's going on all over the world now. But I had to have my hands and head around the know. Why? Because of my grandfathers and my father and my mother. Same forces that drove the Great Depression, drove the great so-called recession that we've just been through. Now, so the issue here is our literacy. For me, it is our literacy that we don't have to see it completely in one way, but we've got to get a hold of this, the core of this thing, so we can get about the business of walking away and creating a new community, a new economy. So that's the story. Is that okay?
Great. we've got 2 empty chairs up here. Come on up. And make sure you introduce yourself, so that we know who you are. Grab a seat.
Okay.
Still got another empty seat
I
up
can
here.
go back down, someone else can come.
We'll go back and forth, that's what we'll do.
I have,
We'll go back and forth.
I have 2 questions and a story. The questions are yes/no questions.
What's your name?
I'm Joe Snyder, and I'm from Multnomah Friends Meeting, I'm Quaker. And one question is for you, Dick. Is there a single human being on this planet who really understands what a derivative is?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure. Second, I just got back from a trip to Guatemala, and one of the groups that we worked with was a women's collective of widows and victims of sexual gender violence. And they have this little business. They have a nursery, and they buy seeds, and they raise little tree seedlings, and then they sell them to people for reforestation. Is that good or bad? That's good. Okay, that is capitalism, pure and simple. So, I just, where I want to go with that, I don't want to have a discussion now, but I wanted to ask us, that I think is good, and what we've been talking about here is bad. This is the no. Where does one slide into the other? And I think it's a question that's really hard for me. You know, I ran a business for many years, and I struggled with this stuff. And now I want to tell you a story. I want to stand up and tell you a story. The reason we were in Guatemala is because we took 20 of our teenagers from around the Northwest for a 10-day service trip in Guatemala. And they planted 2,000 of those trees from them, among other things. And they spent a night in a family, with a family, in this little farming town called Balanya. And yesterday they gave a presentation to a whole bunch of people in our meeting about their trip. And somebody asked them the question that you would expect, which is, how did this change your lives? And one of the young people said, hold that question. We'll talk about that when we're done with everything else. And so the last 10 minutes they stood there and they went through, it wasn't all 20 of them, it was about 11. And each one of them answered that question. And this is just a message of hope, folks. Most of them, the vast majority of them, in one way or another, said, what changed me was that I realized that people without stuff can be happy. In fact, they can be happier than people with stuff. And I was so touched by that, and it just gives me a big hunk of hope.
Well, let's go with the second question. Where does the one slide into the other?
I think there's Main Street capitalism and there's corporate capitalism. And the corporations are out of control. Main Street's not out of control. So there's a huge debate. There's a huge debate that's growing over whether regulation actually works, or whether the whole thing has to be turned over. Or you could also ask the question, how much time do we have now because of global warming and species loss? We have about a decade, period. So are we going to turn the whole system over within a decade? Or are we going to get the beginnings of a new economy established and fight for different kind of policies on the Earth's side? So there are a lot of constraints here, aside from our own growing up and our own brainwashing. But it is, I don't think it's a bad thing to have Main Street capitalism in general. But it's when you get, this is a monopoly game. It's too concentrated. Every market has tremendous concentrations in it. That's where the problem is. And when you have the government bought by those people, it just doubles it down. I don't know if that's where I'm.
I would just add, you just gave a really good indication of when we deregulated, things went to hell in a handbasket. I think a lot of us saw that. Or was that you? Yeah, it was you. Sorry. So clearly there was some effect of the regulation. So the other question is, we've let that genie out of the bottle.
Right.
Is there any hope of putting it back in?
All right, let's have somebody else come up and either respond to Joe's question about, is there any hope of bringing the genie back in? Or
The wizard back in, or?
yeah, right.
So, what struck me was...
Tell them who you are, John.
I'm John McSwiggan from Mission of the Atonement. Thank you, Eric. Was something from Tom Hortman about corporate personhood. And Lewis Powell, who many of you may not know, eventually became a Supreme Court justice. But in 1970, right after Earth Day, he wrote a letter to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying, we got to do something about this shit because these people are going to hurt our bottom line. We need a well-financed, basically endless campaign to fight this. And by God, they did that. And then to me, corporate personhood, giving immortal beings that don't really exist, or legal fictions, the same rights as us, creates something. It's like, if we could undo that, I think it would help a great deal. So I don't have a personal story, I'm not a corporation.
I think going back to that deregulation story that I told, 17 years ago, for me, the economy period was kind of behind a veil, and what we learned by going and watching it was the level of the economy at that time. And then in just the 5 years that we were engaged, it shifted and became much more difficult to manage. So that part I still have not integrated into how to reorganize, because we did have relationships with the CEO of Northwest Natural Gas. He went to Central Catholic High School, and the nun that was with me when we went to negotiate with him called him Bobby because she had him in his class. But that's no longer true. I mean, it's just, that's the deregulation and the predatory, unbounded aspect of corporate capitalism, which I still don't have my hands around.
Well, part of it is globalized. When it's globalized, not just national, but globalized,
Right. Yeah.
there is no point person.
There is no.
There is no caring for who produces for you. They're no different than the products. They're as least as expendable as the products, perhaps more so.
I not only
Do you want a chair?
Come on up.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I gotta have another woman up here.
All right.
We'll take over, you outnumber us.
Well, not only that, but
Who are you?
I'm Anna Barnett from Multnomah Friends Meeting. Thank you. If Joe's cooperative in Guatemala that he talked about was a corporation, legally they wouldn't be allowed to do what they're doing because it wouldn't maximize their profits. So they wouldn't be working exclusively with women who were victims of violence. They'd be working with the cheapest workers that they could get. And they wouldn't have a mission that was about planting trees and reforestation. They would have a mission that's solely about the bottom line. So that's one piece, and then there's another piece about when we have our economic indicators, like the GDP that she talked about. It doesn't measure what we want. It measures all of this. It just measures all of this crap all together. And I think there was another piece too. But for me, this really started to come together through I don't really have a personal story because for me this started to come together from reading really good books. I put one of them on the table over there. It's called Sacred Economics, and it actually really breaks down piece by piece the components that create the system, and it also has a step-by-step idea of how, in fact, the system is already starting to unravel and transition, and the way that that could continue so that we have a completely different form of capitalism and money system.
We have to be careful, I think, because a lot of people have had great hopes and were surprised by the resiliency of capitalism. So you have to be wary. I think another thing here, from my perspective, is this is both left and right brain work. Okay? And so it's as important, please, it's as important to name your own emotions about our entanglement as it is to name the elements of the system. I do not think we will have the staying power nor the imaginative power to really change anything unless we do the emotional work, the spiritual work.
So how are we doing on building organizations that are helping people do the spiritual work and the economic forays, the understanding of the systems that we're up against or living within, whether you think you're up against it or not, and doing that spiritual work that's commensurate with it? How are we doing, and what does that mean for our institutions, who are, I believe, really organized that way? We're kind of, what were the common things? Corporate governance structure, former Redeemer Lutheran Church, a board, committees, governance structure, pretty much from the boardroom. Okay.
There we go.
Hello, I'm Heather. I attend St. Andrew Catholic Church in Alberta, and emotion, I wanted to talk about emotion. Yeah, I used to live at a Catholic worker in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is about the most divided place, at least in this country, that you can go. We lived in a house just outside of Skid Row, which is the largest urban houseless population in the country. And we lived in a really nice mansion that was one of the oldest houses in the neighborhood. We were the only mostly white community in the neighborhood. So it rocked me, but I had gotten used to emotion from before that. I have a friend. She's my friend. I don't know why we're friends. She's exactly the opposite of me. She's an Irish immigrant, learned from her parents the value of doing your best, and if you do your best, things will fall together for you. And her grandparents escaped the famine, and so this is the best country in the world, and it gives people opportunity. And gung-ho military, gung-ho SUVs, and I didn't even bother starting with her. But we had a lot of fun together, which was weird. So she lived in a penthouse apartment on a high-rise building in LA. And every once in a while I'd go visit her. And then at one point I said, Denise, why don't you come visit my house? I think it was my birthday, actually, so this was her reason for being willing to do that. And she came and picked me up, and she walked into this house, and she saw the activities that were going on. And I'd always felt that there was this dam, there was this break that she was unwilling to let it go past that. And I knew there was pain back there, I knew there was, and she just didn't release it. And she walked into this house, and she just started sobbing. And she said, is going on here? How can I contribute to this? And I realized the importance of the heart before the head, and how we do not learn this in our culture. That's all I got.
Well, I'll probably cry. I'm gonna stand up because I'm sick of sitting. So I worked. Hi, Tommy.
Tommy?
Oh, I'm Tommy Carlisle from Oklahoma Meeting. I've worked in education my whole life, elementary school and then college and then adult education for the last 20 years. So all the people I have worked with for the last 20 years are very poor. They are low literate. They don't have a lot of hope about stuff, but they get some along the way sometimes. So I've worked both at colleges, where I ran adult ed programs, and I have been a director of a not-for-profit. 1 year of the 3 years I was there, I had this incredible board. They loved our people, the immigrants and the other people who were trying to get high school diplomas, etc. And they did everything for us. They raised money for us. They did this, they did that. They gave wonderful awards to these people. They helped them find jobs. Individually, these people on the board did. The next year, I got a board. There were all people who had been sent by their corporations and their law firms, etc., to, it was part of their job performance, to sit on a not-for-profit charity, something or another. So that was the year, and this was in Springfield, Missouri. That was the year that the dot-com crash happened, and about half of our grants that we got for the year were corporate grants from those corporations. Some of the other grants we got were education grants from the State Department of Education. We had some from the feds, we had some from United Way. And then I spent a lot of time running around begging money from businesses and other things. So anyway, what happened when the dot-com crash happened is that almost all of our corporate grants disappeared in the middle of the year, just like that. They called and they took them away. So that was all of the money for our programs, all the salaries for staff, everything. It was half gone right then. And my board called a secret, illegal meeting, personnel meeting, which was illegal in the state and to corporate law. And they decided the way to solve the money problem was to come in and have me fire everybody the next day. So I was at, I knew they were having this meeting, and I was at the Literacy Council. And the president came in 10 o'clock at night, and he says, giving my marching orders. He says, you have to fire everybody tomorrow. And I said, what? And he said, it's the only way we can keep going is to just have you be the only staff person and fire everybody tomorrow. And I said, I can't do that. These people have rent, and they have children, and they have food they have to buy. I'm not firing them tomorrow. And they said, you have to. And I said, I'm not going to do it. So he went away. He didn't know what to do with that. And the next day, 3 of them came back. 2 of them were lawyers. And they'd had another meeting, another secret meeting, and they came in to tell me that I could keep as many people as I could, but the only money that was going to be paid for salaries was my salary. That was it. So I said, fine. And they said, I said, can I do whatever I want with the council? And they said, sure. So I closed at halftime, and I split my salary between all the people working there. And we did that for several months until some of them were able to find other jobs and so on and so forth. So that was my big awakening. There is no heart in profit making at all. There's none. They don't care anything about any of us, nothing. And I hate the us and them because those are people in those corporations, and they have to be healed too. Just like the earth, just like all those poor people I work with. But I don't know. Anyway, that was mine. Oh, I have one more thing to say. It has nothing to do with that, except I learned about it as a result of that work, because a lot of the people saw going into the military as a way to get them out of poverty. And so you probably all know this, but the biggest employer in this country is the United States military. Where are all those people going to get jobs? They come home. Where are they going to work?
Endless war will keep them.
What?
endless war is what they're moving
Yes,
towards.
I know
to
that's
keep
what's
them employed.
happening, yeah. But if we actually were to somehow end the military-industrial complex and not have so much war, where would all those people work? Where would they work? We don't have any place.
Well, and the tragic thing is that there's so much that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And instead we're employing all of those young people to fight war.
So we have done our work. I've got to bring this to the next phase. We've done our job tonight to hopefully peel back some veils and peel back some layers so you could understand things that maybe you had an inkling of, maybe you already understood it, I don't know. Hopefully, and it sounds like there's some agitation here. There's some that not everybody's feeling comfortable with our captivity system. So what I want to do is I want to start our review. So our goals over there was to try to connect our captivity system to the biblical captivity systems. You could stay there or go, whatever you like. Did we do that? Was that helpful? First of all, did we do it?
Yes.
Did we give you that kind of a sense? Did it give you some sense that it's not that what's happening now, while it's new and it's real for us, is not the first time that we've been there? That has been done to us, okay? So you can say that that goal, to one degree or another, was met. The second one was to deepen our understanding of capitalism as a captivity system. Did that work? So I want to hear did it work? Not just yes or no. Do you not understand things? Do you disagree? Not that you don't understand things. Do you see it a different way? Is it different?
No. I think my sense was that what I got from both the readings and the class tonight was a much better sense of where that corporate stuff fits into everything else that's going on in terms of particularly climate issues and that kind of thing.
So we're not going to leave this yet, or before we leave this, are there others? And you don't have to all feel the same way that, what's your name?
Debbie.
That Debbie feels. It's fine to say, I'm uncomfortable with this, or I don't get this, or I disagree.
I felt more trapped at the end of the video when she's trying to get out and can't. And just all the time. It's just, yeah, it's made it worse. It's worse feeling trapped. I mean, that helps understanding. Understanding, I want to use a bad word.
Okay. So a sense of entrapment with this. Lee and then Alice.
I missed a deeper connection to the things that are closer to us. We talked a little bit about it, but there are things that are closer to us than just the larger investment money system. But just in which I enjoyed from the article, the systemic issue, like for example, for me, my deepest anger right now is around a little piece of Legos. And it's just an endless anger, and it has to do even with the mortgage of my house, just is all related to this stupid little piece of Legos. And I wish that there were a little bit more of a deeper connection to the things that are right in our face.
That's important for us to hear. So it would be helpful to have a deeper connection to the things that are right in our face. Help me a little bit with that before I go on to Alice. So in addition to the Lego, which is in your face, can you give me some other language around that so that we can build on that, because it's not totally clear to me. The closer things.
So for me this week, one thing, for example, is that I've been working with my mother in Harper County, Kansas, around...
There's the Kansas connection.
There
we go. Thank you, Dorothy. Go ahead.
Mining the Mississippian plague and the earthquakes that are occurring in greater and greater magnitude. And my mother, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, as a county attorney and elected official, leaving her office because the earthquakes were terrifying, 25 in 1 week.
Wow.
And nobody answering to it. and the governor coming in and saying things like, well, we can't really have a causal connection between human activity and this earthquake. So there I am. I'm driving my car and I'm thinking, I'm driving this car and my mother is having an earthquake. I'm driving this car.
Get it. Okay,
My mother.
good.
So this is
Yes.
right in your face. You can't deny the emotion. So I started researching. I started talking, and this is what
Good.
can possibly break us out of this addictive system. Is that in-your-face stuff that
It's
we
very
can probably
helpful.
share.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Putting a human face on that experience that your mother's having and connecting it to you and what you were doing, what you need to be doing, which is consuming petrochemicals. Get it, I got it. So if we can come up with more of that in your face, that may put us in touch with our hearts or the right way. Thank you. Alice?
I can't say that I have a deeper understanding of anything based on this week or the last however many weeks we've been here. Because I have to say I kind of have understood this for a long time.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
I can't say that I have a deeper understanding because I've been into this for a long time.
Okay.
So the emotional work that needs to be done, hey baby, I've been there. I've been doing that. The in your face stuff, yeah. So for me, that's not an accurate statement, but that's me. So you've got a big range of people here that you're asking.
So question for you.
One thing
yes.
that I
Okay.
am getting is maybe a better way of being able to express what I have known and understood, and particularly in a spiritual context.
Thank you for that. Alice, can I ask you a question? Have you been going through what you've been talking about, your understanding of it, your emotional reaction to it, alone or in community?
Some of each.
Okay. So my hope as we move forward with this class is that you will find opportunity to connect maybe more with community or with new community across institutions. We need to wrap this up, but I think you wanted to say something? Bear with me. Go ahead. What's your name? Sorry.
Steve, I'm from Bridge City Friends. I started to write an article called Quakers Declare War on the Military. It may sound like an onion, but what I'm concerned about having to do with this, I have a deeper understanding of why corporations are the bad guys. And I'm constantly barraged with demonizing everything that we rely on. And if we only understand what the military does wrong or whatever, we disrespect them to the point that no understanding is going to work. No change is going to happen as long as they are the bad guys, they are the other, that we can put all of our stuff onto, so we don't have to own it.
But they're not the other, they're us. The others are all we have.
This is not helping, you know what I'm saying? It's not helping that. The more you demonize, we're going to have to work with these folks. If we're going to make a change, it's going to happen within this. And so, let's do it.
I also feel that frustration so deeply. I feel like this system or conspiracy or whatever is being maintained by people who are not dumber than me and not smarter than me and not better than me and not worse than me and not more loving than me and not less loved than me. Like, if we're gonna get into our emotions, we have to be thinking about what we get from this system. It feeds us. It's so resilient because it meets our needs. We're just meeting our human needs.
I know we have to quit. Can these two be very short? One sentence?
Dorothy Cottingham, St. James Lutheran,
Thank you, Dorothy.
and a pulpit supply all over Portland preaching. My frustration feeds right off of what you're saying, that we are demonizing the people who sit in our churches because they work in those corporations. And when we demonize the corporations in our preaching and in our conversation and our Bible studies, they back off of us because we become one of the corporations who's you know, trying to tell them what they have to do. So gentle, gentle, gentle.
Thank you.
Yeah, and not only are the people who are doing this not better or worse than us, they are us, and that's where I get stuck when I go into these conversations. I've already looked at some of the conceptual pieces about what the capitalist system is. The next place I go is, where does my money come from, and where do I put it? And neither of those things are in any way independent of the system, and so then I'm left with this sinking sense of the entrapment that somebody talked about before.
What traps
So-